Hey, how are you doing? This is George with Truck Driver Nation. So, what we're going to discuss now, you guys excuse my voice is a little rough as usual because I talk so much, but it's going to be involving the risk management during roadside inspections. A lot of people don't consider teaching this to freight dispatch students, but roadside inspections, obviously, people take them as a routine stops conducted by the DOT or obviously state law enforcement because they're trained to be DOT certified officers to obviously sure that the commercial vehicles that we got out there and the drivers obviously comply with the safety regulations. Now, the driver credentials, that's their driver's license and everything. That's what they're looking at, their medical certificate and any endorsements like hazmat, doubles, triples, and stuff to that degree. Also, the driver compliance with their HOS, their hours of service, via their ELD, their electronic logging device, to actually check it and also going to look at their overall controlled substances, alcohol status, and that's going to be on the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse queries. Also, the vehicle condition. So they're going to look when they inspect it, they're going to be looking at things like the brakes, tires, lights, steering, coupling devices, exhaust system, emergency equipment, the cargo securement equipment, and overall mechanical fitness. Fitness. And when I say securement equipment, they're even going to look at how it's actually secured. Documentation, when they're actually looking inside their permit book, as we call them, they're going to be looking at their registration, their insurance, their permits, their bill of lading, their freight documents to ensure that one, yeah, that's everything's in place, but actually that load actually belongs with that truck. So as a freight dispatcher, don't confuse it and cross up the loads and put an MC on a load that don't belong on a certain truck. That does get busted out. Now, dispatcher's role, indirect but critical. It really is. Now, while dispatchers are not physically present at the roadside, you're definitely going to be present when the driver calls and pissed off if you screwed him over. But their daily decisions and oversight directly influence a driver's and a vehicle's readiness for inspection. Obviously, as a dispatcher, your actions are inactions, but not doing what you need to do can significantly reduce or increase the likelihood of violations. And that's going to end up looking like in fines, out of service status, which is a hell of a no-no, major violation, and they could actually occur during an inspection. Now, really, you need to know why it matters. Now, it's crucial for carrier survival. The market's already hard enough out there, and I'm actually going to do a whole point about what the market looks like versus cents per mile and everything. But in this given status, when we're talking about these roadside inspections, we're looking at the direct impact on the CSA scores and how that actually impacts it and how it's going to impact it in relation to what it looks like to the given broker. Now, violations filing during inspections directly contribute to carrier CSA. That's the compliance, safety, and accountability, right? So the scores across multiple basics, as they call it, BASIC. That's an acronym. So that being said, vehicle maintenance basic for mechanical defects, the hours service, the hours of surface compliance, that's considered basic for the hours of service violation. Unsafe driving basic. And when I put basic, because I want you to know this is part of the basic profile, right? Um, I'm sorry, unsafe driving, which is considered basic for issues like speeding, reckless driving, or failure to wear a seatbelt. Driver fitness basic. This is going to be for issues with a license, a medical card, or qualifications. Also, controlled substances and alcohol. Like I said, it was on the basic. That's for related violations, including a prohibited status in the clearinghouse. They are out of service immediately. Okay. Now, a high, poor, because high is poor on the CSA scores, lead to increased DOT scrutiny, more frequent audits, higher insurance premiums, and difficulties securing loads. Give me 1 second. Let me go back to where I was at because I don't want to skip nothing on this. But yeah, you don't want to have a high CSA, and that's going to play hell on wheels getting them to be able to secure the loads because that's what the brokers are looking at. Now, you out of service orders, that's a big one, okay? Now, there are the most immediate and costly consequences. If a service violation is found, like critical brake defect, driver over the HOS limits, driver in a prohibited clearinghouse status, the driver or the truck or driver or both can immediately be placed in OOS, which is out of service. Now, this obviously equates to massive delays, missed delivery windows, potential penalties for the shippers and brokers, and then also is going to damage your overall performance reputation. This also ends up in significant costs like fines, tow fees, repair costs, potential need for a rescue truck driver, loaded somebody to come get the truck, and loss of revenue for the downtime. It also increase audit risk because if frequent out of service orders are a major trigger for full DOT compliance audits. So you're definitely with the OOS. We're definitely now when you're with a company, like even as a solo driver, extremely, let's put it, if that's a smaller company, they get really pissed off because it's out of service and you should not have had one. Now, in addition to get fines and penalties, even if there is not an out of service, violations often come with monetary fines because they want the money anyways, that accumulate and impact the carrier's profitability. So if you're on that borderline, you don't need these on your neck. So as a dispatcher, you need to make sure when you're dealing with that truck, you cover all these points to begin with. Now, also your reputation. A carrier with a history of poor inspections results is obviously viewed as unreliable and unsafe, making it harder to attract and retain good drivers and secure profitable contracts with your brokers or your direct shippers. Now, key dispatcher contributions to risk management. So was often missed in training. So strict hours of service, compliance enforcement, this is paramount, okay? Realistic trip planning, never dispatch a load that forces a driver to violate the hours of service rules to make a deadline. Build a buffer in the time for delays. I do 50 miles an hour and I stick with it. And if the driver needs to actually have the downtime to reset, then they're going to have to do it because I'm not playing the game, even with the drivers I actually do now. That's not the way I roll the ball. And I don't have nothing coming back on me, people being pissed off at me when they should have just took 34-hour restart. Now, the ELC monitoring, that's going to be so understand, I mean, yeah, ELC monitoring, but basically the ELD, right? So I don't know why ELC means something, and I forgot what it means, but it's understand ELD data. If a driver is approaching limits, ensure that I think it's electronic logging compliance. I think that's what it was. But understand the electronic logging device data. If a driver is approaching the limits, ensure that they take the required breaks and stops. And tell them you're not going to do it. You're going to be their dispatcher, and you make them sign a piece of paper that you're not held accountable if they get an OOS out of service if something happens in relation to that, because that's an instant out of service if they're outside the ELD hours of service. Now, educate and support. So emphasize to the drivers the importance of legal hours of service, especially if it's their own their own authority, their MC, and encourage them not to drive fatigued. They wreck, kill somebody, hours of service violation, they're going to be able to see it on the ELD. It's a good chance if there's a fatality, they probably might be eating a hell of a lot of bologna sandwiches in the local jail while they wait to go to court. Now, being proactive vehicle maintenance and communication. Obviously, stress the pre-trip, post-trip inspections, emphasize the importance of thorough inspections to ensure the drivers have adequate time to perform them. Action driver defect reports. That's going to be one. Take the driver reports of vehicles defects seriously and immediately. Do not pressure the driver to just get there, right, or just keep driving with a known issue. Arrange for the repairs or a replacement unit. Especially if it's owner-operator, say, look, let me start pricing the parts. Let's get it fixed. It's best for you, best for us not having a service failure or you getting violated by DOT and then obviously being put out of service if it's severe enough. So, and also make sure you do regular maintenance schedules. Find out what the owner-operator wants. Make sure that you're following it and be aware of the carrier's scheduled maintenance and avoid dispatching trucks or their truck that's near the critical service intervals, if possible. You don't want to wait till the last minute. Get it done ahead of time when he's actually got time and he's not cramped for time and he's on the clock trying to push a load to get it to the delivery point on time. Now, driver qualifications verification. This is done literally when you actually even sign them up as an independent freight dispatcher. You need to look at their pre-dispatch checks so even before dispatching them. Even when you start with them, quickly confirm the driver has a valid CDL, a current medical card, and any required endorsements, like say for hazmat. You're going to have it in your record as an independent freight dispatcher. So get all that data, put it in the folder, and you can follow through and schedule and keep them up to date. Like, hey, do you remember you got to get your IFTA or, you got to get a new registration, whatever it might be. And that clearinghouse status has a big pull. That's federal government now. Now, while the carrier is responsible for formal inquiries, a dispatcher should have a process to quickly verify a driver isn't in a prohibited status for the clearinghouse before assigning a load, or even actually before working with them if they're a new client. So ignorance is not an excuse for a DOT auditor. Ignorance of the law never floated, and it's not going to start today because you want it to. And documentation readiness. We're talking about everything that's in their trip pack. So you got a checklist. Remind drivers that all necessary documents, the registration, insurance, fuel permits, IFTA, ELD access, including the directions to the ELD, bill of lading, and load confirmation. Those are required documents to make sure. Well, the bill of lading that comes with the load, but the rest of it is required to be in that permit book. And make sure it's accurate. Ensure the load documents match the actual cargo and destination, and obviously match the truck that they're in. Cargo securement managed with flatbeds instead, any of them. Everything requires securement. But while drivers secure cargo, while the drivers actually are the ones that secure the cargo, dispatchers should understand the basic securement principles to ensure the load is appropriate for the equipment and can be safely secured. Like weight distribution. What do they have on the truck that's required to secure that load? Because a broker will tell you what's available. And if they don't have it, that driver needs to go get that securement equipment because it's required. It was told. Now, can he get away with other stuff? Maybe, maybe not. You know, I've done that, and yeah, I mean, it secured it down, and I felt it was safe. But if you don't know securement, definitely you need to take a video, watch it, and understand securement when it comes to your flat goods and step decks. And also, when they tell you, hey, you need 6 load locks on a reefer load, there's a reason. If they require easy tracks, that's where you lock them in, put a strap across, and wrench them down. They're saying that for a reason. Also, overweight loads. Never dispatch a load that will actually cause the truck to be overweight. We're talking about gross or axle weight. They're designed specifically for certain weights, and they actually give a percentage variable. And if they're outside that, then obviously there's going to be fines due to that. Whether they shut them down or not just depends on how strict they are, or how, you know, whether the actual inspecting officer is looking at it. But there's always going to be fines attached to it. Now, professional demeanor and communication. You need to actually talk to drivers, you know, if you're having a problem. Encourage drivers to be polite, cooperative, and professional during the actual inspection. This can often lead to a smoother process. That bullshit, hey, this is my rights and I know them everything. You can practice that on the local cops. Don't do it while you're under a load. So make sure that if you've got a driver that's like that, I would actually separate ways with them. I would find me another owner operator to dispatch for, because whatever he does out there is going to ripple back on you, and that delays what you're doing when you're effectively trying to help your other owner operators. Now, post-inspection, the follow-up, understand violation reports like the DVIRs, that's the driver vehicle inspection reports, ensure violations are addressed, and that the safety department, which you might be representing their safety department, is informed that for the CS score management. If there's something that has to be sent in, like within a certain number of days, or paid within a certain number of days, or following the status within a certain number of days, get it done. Ask the owner operator how you want to handle it, and then I've actually put it into action so it's handled. Now, obviously, there's a big training gap. Now, far too often, dispatcher training focuses on the how-to of finding and booking loads and what to do during a crisis, but not the proactive how to prevent a crisis. The direct link between a dispatcher's daily operational choices and a carrier's exposure during a roadside inspections is frequently underestimated and undertaught. So that being said, not only do I drive this home with everybody that's actually taking freight dispatcher course with me, but I also push this on my drivers. Yeah, I have to do it methodically and with a level of compassion and finesse, because remember, I work for them. But at the same token, I don't need them screwing me up and tying me down because of their inability to act accordance to regulations. So effective risk management during roadside inspection starts long before the blue lights actually are up behind that truck, right? So it begins with the dispatcher's commitment to compliance, proactive decision making, the constant communication with the drivers, and if there's a safety department, and a safety department or a safety officer. Sometimes they're just called safety officer, right? And a dispatcher who actively manages these risks is an invaluable asset to a carrier's safety profile and financial stability. You don't have to be praised for it, because that is your job, to protect your interest, and your interest is in that owner operator actively, actually effectively moving that freight. But anyways, I'm going to kind of leave it at that. I hope that shed some light on what you need to do as a freight dispatcher. But if you got questions or concerns, please drop them notes down there, the questions down there, etc. Our contact information is down there below. And you know, if you want to be a freight dispatcher, please let me know. We'll definitely get you up to speed. We do have a course for that, as well as, you know, assist you helping get owner operators, etc., etc. So, but anyways, thank you for your time. I hope you learned something from it, and thank you. And we'll move on to the next subject.